Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're gonna talk about tech champions, and more specifically the best tech champions to take all the way up to rank 4 in my personal opinion. Now before we go any further, keep in mind that we each have our own preferences and interests in the game. Not every champion is like equally valuable for every game mode, so how valuable each champion is will entirely depend to you on which of the game modes you are focusing on. On top of that, also how much you enjoy using the champion, because if you do enjoy using a champion, typically you know much more about that champion and are capable of getting better results out of said champ than anybody on an average result would. So don't ultimately listen to any naysayers. If you really like champion, even if most people say the champion is average or maybe not worth it, go ahead, rank it. Rank up that Darkhawk, rank up that Sentinel or Yondu or Vulture or whoever else it is that you absolutely love using. That being said, let's move on and take a look at tech champions that are, in my opinion, most worthy of rank 4. And we're obviously going to start off with Ghost. Ghost is crazy good. There is a very good reason why Kabam is trying very hard to ghost-proof as many quests as possible. There's a very good reason why Ghost constantly gets banned in Alliance War, frequently gets banned in Alliance, in Battlegrounds. Ghost still one of the craziest champions in the game, if not the craziest champ, and that should be recognized. So, Ghost is definitely very high up in the priority list for me as well. Now, I do have a couple of tech rank 4s, and one of them is not Ghost yet, but obviously I've had my reasons in keeping with the things that we needed for Alliance War, in keeping the things that we needed to do for Prestige, so on and so forth. But Ghost is definitely going to go up in near future on my account, because she is that gosh darn amazing. Moving on to the next one is obviously Nimrod. Now, Nimrod is an absolute mutant destroyer, arguably the best tech champion to destroy all the mutants. He's kind of Human Torch-esque in a sense, but he's also extremely capable in a generic average matchup. Even if regeneration or prowess effects are not involved, I often frequently finish sub 1 minute fights with my rank 4 Nimrod against other tech champions, against random champions. He is extremely versatile, super tanky, has tons of utility, has access to power control, has access to large amounts of shock damage, unstoppable, cowardice, energize, energy vulnerability, immunity to armor breaks, basically. So there is so much love about Nimrod. He was my very first tech rank up, and I have not regretted it for a single second. The man just performs in virtually every aspect of the game. Again, he's kind of Human Torch-esque, Archangel-esque champion, where obviously he does by far the best against mutants, but he's still a force to be reckoned with in a generic matchup as well. Speaking of a mutant killer, we have Omega Sentinel. Omega Sentinel is also an absolute machine when it comes to destroying mutant champions. Nimrod does do it better, but Omega Sentinel is arguably better in non-mutant matchups, and both of them are somewhat challenging defensively, especially in the right conditions. Omega Sentinel, I guess, more so. She kind of complements Nimrod extremely well, and for a very long time it has been debate which one is better, Omega Sentinel or Nimrod. I personally slightly prefer Nimrod, but I think Omega Sentinel is just about as good of a champion. Better in long form content, and better, in my opinion, in non-mutant matchups, because she can bypass miss, she has access to heal block, she has access to cowardice, to incinerate, to auto block. She's super tanky, massive energy resistance. Also, when it comes to signature and awakened abilities, I do think Ghost should be awakened, and ideally as high sig as possible when you rank 4. Nimrod, in my opinion, is well worth taking to rank 3 unawakened. If you want to rank 4, then in my opinion you should get this guy awakened, because his sig ability is much more important than many people realize. And to Omega Sentinel, I'd say you should at least get her to like 680. I think that's pretty kind of safe spot to stop, unless you are putting in more signature stones for prestige reasons. I think at 680 you get majority of the benefit out of it. Next champion that I think is still a powerhouse is Warlock. Whenever there is willpower involved, Warlock is on steroids, basically. And because of that, Warlock has historically been an Alliance War MVP. He's a great questing champion. And on top of that, right now with Battlegrounds, because willpower is typically also involved, Warlock is an absolute beast. One of the staple Battleground champions, in my opinion, because he's just so versatile. There are so many ways how you can play the guy with the parry heavies without ever enabling opponent throw a special attack, or just going full on aggro, trying to cycle your armor breaks and access to shock and all the immunities, so on and so forth. So Warlock is again a utility powerhouse, still very much so worth rank 4, and probably, quite possibly, my next tech rank 4 champion. Now we're moving up further. I still think Ultron is absolute beast. Ultron shines the most in clearing content in Alliance Quest. Realistically, I don't see him used as much in Alliance War or in Battlegrounds, even though he does and will always have a use in Battlegrounds offensively as well with his incredible damage output. But primarily Ultron is mainly a champion for destroying kind of like mid to long form or even shorter form quests. Tons of utility, tons of healing and damage reduction there as well. All the energy damage that he takes, he can regenerate about 65% of that in max sig. He can reduce incinerate and shock duration by 80%. He has 2 regens in there, and obviously all those crazy numbers up there. Ultron is one of my personal favorite champions to play story content with, and worth considering rank 4, definitely. I wouldn't put him before the first 4 champions that I mentioned, but he's a solid option as well. Moving on, a champion that I would personally probably rank 4 right now before Ultron, and it's Thekiryu SpiderMan. And Thekiryu SpiderMan, again, is getting a new lease on life, just like Hitmonkey and a whole bunch of other champions, because of Battlegrounds. He's just a beast. He's one of the fastest champions for that specific fight duration, and there are tons of champions that he can go up against because he doesn't rely on like specific debuffs or immunities. Assisted auto evade can also be quite helpful. A bit of power control. Taunt typically makes fights even quicker. So if you do care about Battlegrounds a lot, I do think Thekiryu SpiderMan is a very good rank up. If you're not bothered about Battlegrounds much, then I'd probably put Thekiryu SpiderMan a bit further on the back burner. So as I said before, it all depends on the game modes which you are most interested. For instance, if you care most about clearing, you know, random content and like Alliance Quest, I'd definitely pick Ultron. If you care most about Battlegrounds, I'd definitely pick Thekiryu SpiderMan. Next champion is Penny Parker. Penny Parker, I think in community somehow still is underrated offensively. She is a fantastic offensive option as well, because one level 1, one level 2 is going to nuke down a massive health pool. But obviously, she's also a menace on defense and a force to be reckoned with, and a champion that always pretty much requires a good counter, or you're just going to be very slow in dealing with her. She has access to passive heal blocks, access to incinerate, auto block safety nets, incinerate and poison immunities, powered burn mechanics on level 1s and level 3s, so there's plenty of offensive utility as well as damage, but for most people she's a defensive menace. Even though Penny Parker now is getting more and more champions that do destroy her in form of Gore, Hulkling, Valkyrie, Gala, and so on and so forth, she's still a champion that will forever require to have like very good counter if you want the fight to go quickly, basically. So I do think it is well worth ranking up Penny Parker as well. And the final champion, who can guess that one, is Guardian. I still think Guardian is, again, being underrated by community overall. He's quite troublesome to deal with fast, specifically for Battlegrounds. Also, he does have a ton of offensive utility. And in case of Guardian, obviously, you do want to have him at Sig 200, and that is very important, especially when it comes to his energy resistance. Last 26 stones basically give more than previous 80 or so. So he's pretty much a Sig 200 must-have champion, in my opinion. And then offensively, he does not crit, relies on shock damage, and can, again, nuke pretty much anything in the same rotation as Penny Parker in level 1, level 2. That auto block can be quite clutch. Bleed resistance is super useful, as well as energy resistance, and that auto block altogether kind of makes him a bit of a defensive tank as well for Battlegrounds. And a lot of people are still sleeping on this guy offensively and defensively, in my opinion. He can definitely be a kind of like a surprise pick for a ton of champions, and pretty much everybody who I know who has ranked this guy up absolutely love him. So these are the tech champions, in my opinion, that are the best options to take to rank 4. Again, there was no specific order to them, but if I had to kind of like pull it out, then I'd go with, first of all, Ghost, Nimrod, Omega Sentinel, and Warlock as my top 4 picks. And then I would say Ultron, starting against Spidey, Penny, and Guardian as my rest of the 4 picks. There are more tech champions, as I mentioned at the beginning, that are well worth people's consideration. I know there are some crazy Doc Ock fans. Captain America Sam Wilson is quite a potent champion. We have new infamous Iron Man, who I did not want to include in this video because I know very little about him. Then we have Mysterio also making waves. Infinity Iron Man, for defensive purposes, he can stall the fight out quite badly. Nebula is a bit of a beast now. Rocket Raccoon soon is going to get a buff, so that's going to be interesting to see. Then we still have Sentinel, Silver Centurion, and OG Vision, and War Machine, all of whom are also extremely kind of potent champions. So yeah, Tech and Hulkbuster, definitely Hulkbuster as well, and Guillotine 2099. So Tech definitely has loads and loads of champions that are of very good quality, and it all depends on you which champions you feel most comfortable with. But my 4 first picks definitely would be in between Ghost, Nimrod, Omega Sentinel, and Warlock. Let me know what you guys think, and I will catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about